The laughter died in Maya's throat as the first shot cracked through the mess hall like a whip. For a heartbeat, the sound didn't register, just another backfire from the motor pool. Maybe a dropped tray in the kitchen. Then Corporal Jackson's head snapped back in a spray of crimson, and his body toppled backward off the bench. Maya's training kicked in before her mind could process what she was seeing. She dove sideways as the second shot punched through the air where her head had been, rolling under the nearest table as chaos erupted around her. Soldiers scrambled for cover, shouting orders that made no sense, reaching for weapons that weren't there. The mess hall had always been a safe zone. No one carried firearms to dinner. Except tonight, apparently, someone had. Contact left. Contact left. Sergeant Williams screamed from across the room, but his voice cut off abruptly. Maya risked a glance from under the table and saw him clutching his throat, blood seeping between his fingers. Standing over him, calm as death itself, was Private Chun Sweet. Quiet Chun, who sent half her paycheck home to her grandmother in San Francisco. Chun's service pistol was steady in her hands, her stance textbook perfect. But her eyes, Maya had seen those eyes before, in the aftermath of IED explosions, in soldiers who'd seen too much and felt too little. 1,000-yard stare, they called it. Except Chun had never been deployed. She'd never seen combat until now. Maya. The voice belonged to Specialist Brooks, her bunkmate, her workout partner, the woman who'd held her hair back when she'd gotten food poisoning last month. Brooks was crouched behind an overturned table 20 feet away, her face pale with terror. What the hell is happening? Maya opened her mouth to answer, but movement in her peripheral vision made her freeze. Lieutenant Torres, 6'2" of muscle and authority. The man who'd pulled her from a burning vehicle in Kandahar. The man whose ring sat in her footlocker upstairs was walking methodically between the tables. His sidearm was drawn, and he was checking bodies with the clinical efficiency of a battlefield medic. Except he wasn't checking for survivors. He was making sure there weren't any. Maya watched in horror as Torres approached a wounded soldier, Martinez from Alpha Company, who was trying to crawl toward the exit with a shattered leg. Torres knelt beside him almost gently, placed his pistol against Martinez's temple, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The sound was muffled, intimate, execution style. Torres. Maya shouted before she could stop herself. What are you doing? The lieutenant's head turned toward her voice with mechanical precision. When their eyes met across the carnage, Maya felt ice flood her veins. There was no recognition in his gaze, no flicker of the man who'd proposed to her 3 weeks ago during a weekend pass in Denver. His pupils were dilated, black holes that seemed to swallow light. Target acquired, he said, his voice flat and emotionless. He raised his weapon. Maya rolled hard to the right as his first shot splintered the concrete where she'd been lying. Her shoulder slammed into a table leg, sending lightning up her arm, but she kept moving. The exit was 30 feet away, might as well have been 30 miles. Between her and the door stood at least 6 of her own soldiers, all armed, all hunting, all wrong. She belly crawled toward the kitchen, using overturned tables and scattered chairs for cover. Behind her, she could hear Torres coordinating with the others, his voice carrying the same tactical authority it always had. But the words were all wrong. Sector clear. Moving to secondary targets. Copy. Initiating lockdown protocol. Negative survivors in Quadrant 3. They were talking about their friends. Their brothers and sisters in arms, like they were enemy combatants. Like they were things to be eliminated. Maya reached the kitchen doors and risked another look back. Brooks was still alive, still hiding, but Chun was moving toward her position with predatory focus. In the far corner, she spotted 2 more survivors, Johnson and Patel from Bravo Company, but they were pinned down, trapped. The kitchen doors swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. Maya slipped through and found herself in familiar territory. She'd pulled KP duty here enough times to know every inch. The industrial ovens were still warm from dinner prep, casting long shadows across the stainless steel surfaces. She could hear movement in the dining area, systematic and coordinated. They were clearing the room. Maya's hands shook as she tried to process what she'd witnessed. These weren't enemy infiltrators wearing stolen uniforms. These were her people soldiers she'd trained, bled with, trusted with her life. Torres had saved her in Afghanistan. Chun had been her partner in the obstacle course just yesterday, laughing as they'd raced through the mud. Brooks had been planning to be her maid of honor. Now they were hunting her like an animal. She needed weapons. The armory was 2 buildings over, but she'd have to cross open ground to reach it. Through the kitchen service window, she could see into the mess hall. Torres was directing the others with hand signals, dividing them into teams, professional, efficient, terrifying. A sound from the prep area made her freeze, the soft squeak of a rubber sole on linoleum. Someone was in the kitchen with her. Maya grabbed a carving knife from the magnetic strip above the prep station and pressed herself against the walk-in freezer. The footsteps were getting closer, measured and careful. She could hear breathing, controlled and steady. "I know you're in here, Rodriguez." The voice belonged to Corporal Jackson, except Jackson was dead. She'd seen him go down with the first shot. "Come out. Make this easy." Maya's mind reeled. She'd watched Jackson die, seen the blood, seen him fall. But that was definitely his voice, his slight Texas drawl unmistakable. She peered around the freezer door and nearly screamed. Jackson was standing in the doorway, very much alive. The bullet wound in his forehead was still there, a neat hole above his left eyebrow, but no blood flowed from it. His eyes held the same empty stare as the others, and his service pistol was trained on the prep area where she'd been hiding moments before. "Thermal signature detected," he said into his radio. "Target is mobile in the kitchen. Thermal signature?" Maya looked down at herself, then at the industrial oven still radiating heat. The base didn't have thermal imaging equipment in the mess hall. How could he? The realization hit her like a physical blow. Whatever had happened to her unit, it wasn't just psychological. They'd been enhanced somehow, given capabilities they shouldn't have. Jackson should be dead, but he was walking around with a bullet hole in his skull, like it was a minor inconvenience. Maya gripped the knife tighter and made her decision. The armory was her only chance. She had to reach it, had to get real weapons, had to find a way to stop this nightmare before it spread beyond the base. She took a deep breath, said a prayer to whatever God might be listening, and sprinted for the back exit. Behind her, Jackson's voice was calm and professional as he reported her movement. "Target is mobile, heading for the armory. All units converge." Maya burst through the kitchen's rear door into the cool night air, her legs pumping as she raced across the open ground toward salvation. Or toward her death. Either way, she was done running. Maya's boots pounded against the asphalt as she sprinted across the open courtyard, every instinct screaming that she was exposed, vulnerable. The armory loomed ahead, a squat concrete building that had never looked so much like salvation. Behind her, she could hear the kitchen door slam open and Jackson's voice cutting through the night air. "Target heading north. Intercept at grid 77. The clinical precision in his tone made her skin crawl. This was Jackson, who'd cried during the unit's movie night last week, who'd called his mother every Sunday without fail. Now he spoke about hunting her down like he was ordering supplies. Maya reached the armory door and yanked on the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Standard protocol after 1800 hours. She fumbled for her access card, hands trembling as footsteps echoed from multiple directions. They were converging on her position with military efficiency. The card reader beeped green, and Maya threw herself inside, slamming the door behind her. Her fingers found the manual lock just as something heavy struck the other side. The reinforced steel held, but she could hear them testing the hinges, the frame, looking for weaknesses. "Breach protocol authorized," came Torres's voice through the door. 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Maya's eyes adjusted to the dim emergency lighting, and she moved fast. M4 carbines lined the walls in neat rows, but they were secured with cable locks. She grabbed bolt cutters from the maintenance kit and started cutting, the metallic snaps echoing in the confined space. A new sound made her freeze, the high-pitched whine of a cutting torch. They were going through the door like it was made of paper. Maya had maybe 30 seconds before they breached. She freed an M4 and grabbed magazines, stuffing them into her cargo pockets. Body armor next. She yanked the tactical vest from its hook and struggled into it as sparks began showering from the door. The acrid smell of burning metal filled the air. 15 seconds to breach, Torres announced. Maya spotted the ventilation grate near the ceiling, too small for a person, but maybe. She grabbed a fragmentation grenade from the explosives locker, pulled the pin, and rolled it toward the door. Then she dove behind a weapons rack and covered her ears. The explosion was deafening in the confined space. Smoke and debris filled the air, and Maya's ears rang like church bells. But she was moving before the dust settled, climbing onto a storage crate and kicking out the ventilation grate. She squeezed into the ductwork just as voices penetrated the ringing in her ears. Structure compromised. Target escaped through ventilation. Copy. Initiating building-by-building search. Maya crawled through the narrow duct, her tactical vest scraping against the metal walls. The base's ventilation system was a maze she'd studied during fire safety training, knowledge that might just keep her alive. She could hear movement below as her former teammates spread out, their coordination flawless. The duct opened into the communications building, and Maya dropped down into the server room. Banks of computers hummed around her, their LED indicators casting eerie patterns on the walls. She needed information, needed to understand what had turned her unit into emotionless killers. Maya pulled out her phone and connected to the base's internal network. Her security clearance still worked, which meant whatever had happened was recent enough that protocols hadn't been updated. She accessed the security camera feeds and felt her blood turn to ice. The mess hall looked like a slaughterhouse. Bodies lay scattered between overturned tables. But what made her stomach lurch was the methodical way her infected teammates were processing the scene. They moved from corpse to corpse, checking for signs of life with clinical detachment. When they found wounded survivors, they executed them with single shots to the head. Maya switched to other camera feeds. The barracks, the motor pool, the administrative offices, everywhere she looked, the same scene played out. Her unit had spread throughout the base like a virus, eliminating anyone they encountered. The timestamp showed, and it all started 23 minutes ago. 23 minutes to turn her friends into monsters. She pulled up the duty roster and cross-referenced it with the camera feeds. Everyone who'd been at dinner was now part of the hunting party. Everyone who'd missed it herself, the night shift guards. A few soldiers on leave were either dead or missing. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, accessing personnel files, medical records, anything that might explain what she was seeing. A classified folder caught her attention. Project Mindbridge, authorized personnel only. Her clearance shouldn't have been high enough, but the system let her in. What she found made her hand shake. Dr. Elizabeth Vance, the base's chief medical officer, had been conducting experiments with a new combat enhancement drug. The files were filled with technical jargon, but the basic concept was clear. A neurochemical compound designed to eliminate fear, hesitation, and emotional attachment during combat operations. The perfect soldier drug, but the test results were horrifying. Early trials on lab animals had shown promise, but higher doses caused complete personality suppression. The subjects became efficient killing machines with no regard for friend or foe, driven only by the imperative to eliminate perceived threats. Maya scrolled through the test logs, her horror growing. Vance had been secretly dosing volunteers from the unit, telling them it was a new vitamin supplement. The doses had been gradually increased over weeks, and tonight's dinner had contained the final activation compound. A sound from the hallway made her look up from the screen. Through the server room's glass partition, she could see Chun moving past with mechanical precision, her weapon at the ready. Maya held her breath until the footsteps faded. She turned back to the files and found something that made her heart race. The drug's effects weren't permanent. The neurochemical compound would metabolize out of their systems within 12 to 18 hours. Her friends were still in there, trapped inside their own minds, while the drug turned them into killers. But there was a catch. The files mentioned aggressive defensive protocols that activated when the subjects perceived a significant threat to their mission. If they felt cornered or believed their objective was in jeopardy, they would escalate to extreme measures. Maya's blood ran cold as she read the final entry in Vance's log. Note: subjects show increased aggression toward unaffected personnel, viewing them as contamination risks. Recommend immediate isolation protocols for any non-enhanced individuals. She was the contamination risk. Her very existence was driving them to hunt her with increasing desperation. A new sound reached her ears, the distant rumble of vehicles approaching the base. Maya checked her watch and felt her stomach drop. The night patrol was returning early from their training exercise. 6 Humvees full of soldiers who had no idea what they were driving into. She grabbed her radio and tried to reach them. Night Patrol Alpha, this is Rodriguez. Do not approach the base. Repeat, do not approach. We have a code black situation. Static answered her. She tried again, switching frequencies, but got nothing. Either her radio was malfunctioning, or they were jamming communications. Through the window, she could see headlights in the distance, growing brighter. The patrol would reach the main gate in less than 10 minutes. Maya watched on the security feeds as her infected teammates took positions around the base perimeter. Their movements coordinated and purposeful. They weren't just hunting her anymore. They were preparing an ambush. Maya grabbed her rifle and checked her ammunition. 30 rounds in the magazine, 2 spare mags in her pockets. Against her entire unit, it might as well be a slingshot. But those soldiers in the approaching vehicles were her friends too, and they were driving straight into a massacre. She had to warn them. Had to stop this, even if it meant going to war with everyone she'd ever loved. Maya burst from the communications building as the first Humvee's headlights swept across the main gate. She had maybe 8 minutes before the patrol reached the kill zone her infected teammates were preparing. The base's floodlights had been strategically disabled, leaving pools of darkness that would funnel the incoming vehicles into a perfect ambush. She sprinted toward the motor pool, staying low and using the shadows between buildings. Her radio crackled with intercepted chatter from the infected soldiers. They were calling themselves Enhanced now, as if they'd evolved beyond their former selves. Enhanced 7 in position at Checkpoint Alpha. Enhanced 3 has Overwatch on the main approach. All units maintain radio discipline. Contaminated personnel may be monitoring. Contaminated. That's what she was to them now. A disease to be eliminated. Maya reached the motor pool and dove behind a parked truck as Chun appeared around the corner, moving with that same mechanical precision. The woman who used to laugh at Maya's terrible jokes now swept the area with her weapon like a hunting predator, her dilated pupils reflecting the distant headlights. The sound of Chun's footsteps faded, and Maya made her move. She needed transportation, something fast enough to intercept the patrol before they reached the gate. Her eyes fell on a dirt bike used for perimeter patrol's keys, still in the ignition. Fuel tank full dot as she swung her leg over the bike. Movement in her peripheral vision made her freeze. Dr. Elizabeth Vance was walking across the courtyard, but something was wrong with her gait. The woman moved with jerky, unnatural steps, like a marionette controlled by an amateur puppeteer. Maya followed Vance's path and felt her blood turn to ice. The doctor was heading toward the medical facility, the same building where she'd been conducting her illegal experiments. But Vance wasn't moving like the others. Where the infected soldiers showed cold efficiency, Vance displayed something closer to panic. Maya made a split-second decision. The patrol was still 6 minutes out, and she needed answers. She killed the bike's engine and followed Vance on foot, keeping to the shadows. The medical facility's doors stood open, emergency lighting casting red shadows down the corridors. Maya could hear Vance moving deeper into the building, her footsteps echoing off the sterile walls. She followed the sound to the research wing, a section of the building most soldiers never entered. What she found there made her stomach lurch. The laboratory looked like a war zone. The equipment lay smashed on the floor. Computer screens flickered with corrupted data, and chemical stains spread across the walls like abstract art. In the center of it all, Dr. Vance stood before a massive containment unit, her hands pressed against the reinforced glass. "I can fix this," Vance was muttering, her voice high and strained. "I can fix this. The neutralizing agent is here somewhere. Has to be here." Maya stepped into the lab, her rifle trained on the doctor. "Dr. Vance." The woman spun around, and Maya saw that her eyes held none of the empty stare that marked the infected soldiers. Instead, they blazed with desperate intelligence and crushing guilt. "Rodriguez!" Vance's voice cracked with relief. "Thank God, you're not affected. You didn't eat the dinner." "I know about Project Mindbridge," Maya said, keeping her weapon steady. "I know what you did to them." Vance's face crumpled. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The compound was stable in all the trials. But something went wrong with the final activation sequence. Instead of enhancing combat effectiveness while maintaining personality, it completely suppressed their emotional centers. How do we stop it? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Vance gestured frantically at the destroyed lab. The neutralizing agent was here, but when the subjects realized what I'd done, they came for me first. Torres led the assault. He looked me in the eyes and said I was a contamination risk that needed to be eliminated. Maya's heart clenched at the mention of Torres. "But you escaped." "Barely. I triggered the lab's emergency lockdown, but they'd already destroyed most of my research." Vance pulled up data on a cracked tablet. "The good news is the compound will metabolize naturally within 12 to 18 hours. The bad news is what they'll do in that time frame." Through the lab's windows, Maya could see the patrol's headlights getting closer. 4 minutes, maybe less. There has to be something, Maya pressed. Some way to reverse the effects faster. Vance's fingers flew over the tablet, pulling up chemical formulas and test results. There might be. The compound works by flooding the brain with synthetic neurotransmitters that suppress emotional processing. If I could create a targeted inhibitor, how long would that take? Hours, maybe days. I'd need a fully equipped lab, and we don't have hours. Maya grabbed Vance by the shoulders. "There's a patrol coming in. 24 soldiers who have no idea what they're driving into. My people are going to slaughter them." Vance's eyes widened. Oh God, the escalation protocols. If the enhanced perceive a significant threat to their mission, they'll eliminate it with extreme prejudice. A full patrol would trigger maximum response. Maya felt the walls closing in. What kind of maximum response? They'll use everything at their disposal. Small arms, explosives, vehicles. They'll turn this base into a fortress and eliminate anything that approaches. Vance's voice dropped to a whisper. And once they've secured the perimeter, they'll start expanding their operational area. Expanding how? The nearest town is 15 miles away. Population 8,000. Vance's tablet slipped from her trembling hands. The compound makes them see unaffected humans as contamination sources. If they break containment, Maya's mind raced. The patrol was 3 minutes out. Her infected teammates were in position, and she was one person with limited ammunition against an entire unit of enhanced soldiers. But she couldn't let them massacre the incoming patrol, and she couldn't let them escape to threaten civilians. Is there anything in this lab that could help? Any equipment that survived? Vance looked around desperately. The aerosol delivery system is intact. If I had the right compound, I could disperse it through the base's ventilation system. But creating the neutralizing agent would take— what about something simpler? Maya interrupted. Something to knock them unconscious, slow them down? There's a sedative compound in the medical storage. Powerful enough to drop a horse, but— Vance hesitated. The enhanced have shown resistance to standard pharmaceuticals. Their enhanced metabolism processes drugs faster than normal. How much faster? Maybe 3 times normal speed. You'd need massive doses, and even then, it might only slow them down. Maya made her decision. Show me. They raced to the medical storage room, where Vance pulled vials of clear liquid from a refrigerated unit. This is it. Concentrated propofol. Normally used for surgery, but in these quantities. How do we get it into their systems? The aerosol system could work, but they'd need to be in an enclosed space. And you'd have to get them all at once, if even one enhanced realizes what's happening. They'll warn the others. Through the building's windows, Maya could see the patrol's headlights sweeping across the outer perimeter. 2 minutes. There's another way, Vance said suddenly. The mess hall's ventilation system is separate from the rest of the base. If we could get them all back there, how? Vance's eyes met hers, and Maya saw a desperate plan forming. We give them what they want most. We give them you. Maya's hands trembled as she loaded the aerosol canisters into her tactical vest. Through the medical facility's windows, she could see the patrol's headlights sweeping closer 90 seconds, until they reached the kill zone. Dr. Vance worked frantically beside her, programming the mess hall's ventilation system from a portable tablet. The sedative will take 30 seconds to disperse once I trigger it, Vance whispered, her fingers flying over the controls. You'll need to keep them in that room for at least 2 minutes to ensure full exposure. And if it doesn't work? Vance's silence was answer enough. Maya checked her rifle one last time, 28 rounds remaining. Against her entire infected unit, it was laughably inadequate. But this wasn't about winning a firefight. This was about buying time and saving lives. The patrol's radio frequency is 142.5, Maya said, handing Vance a spare radio. Once I draw the enhanced to the mess hall, contact the incoming vehicles. Tell them to abort and call for backup. What about you? Maya looked out at the base she'd called home for 3 years, at the buildings where she'd laughed and trained and bled alongside the people who were now hunting her. I'm going to try to bring my friends home. She slipped out of the medical facility and into the night. The patrol's engines were audible now, diesel rumbles echoing off the surrounding hills. Maya could see muzzle flashes in her peripheral vision as the enhanced took their positions. Torres coordinating from the command post, Chun and Jackson flanking the main approach. Others scattered throughout the compound. Maya keyed her radio to the enhanced frequency. This is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. I'm done running. The response was immediate. Torres's voice, cold and mechanical. Target has revealed position. All units converge on communications building. Negative, Maya broadcast, moving toward the mess hall. I'm not at the comms building anymore. I'm where this all started. Where you murdered our friends. She could hear movement in the darkness around her. Boots on gravel, the soft click of weapons being readied. The enhanced were repositioning, drawn by her voice like moths to flame. "I'm in the mess hall," Maya continued, pushing through the doors into the scene of the massacre. Bodies still lay where they'd fallen, dark stains spreading across the floor. "Come finish what you started." Maya positioned herself behind an overturned table and waited. The first enhanced soldier appeared in the doorway. Corporal Jackson, the bullet hole in his forehead like a third eye. He moved with predatory grace, his weapon sweeping the room. "Target acquired," he reported. "Requesting backup for elimination." More figures appeared: Chun, Williams, Martinez. One by one, her former teammates filed into the mess hall, their movements coordinated and efficient. Maya counted 8, then 12, then 15. Almost the entire infected unit, drawn by the promise of ending their hunt. Torres entered last, his presence commanding even in his enhanced state. When he saw Maya crouched behind the table, something flickered across his features, not recognition exactly, but a shadow of the man she'd loved. "Maya Rodriguez," he said, his voice carrying that same flat affect. "You have been designated a contamination risk. Surrender for immediate processing." "Processing?" Maya kept her rifle trained on him, though her hand shook. "Is that what you call murder now?" "Elimination of contaminated personnel is necessary for mission success," Torres replied. "Your continued existence threatens operational security." Maya's radio crackled Dr. Vance's voice, barely a whisper. "Aerosol system armed." "Give me the word." The enhanced soldiers had formed a semicircle around Maya's position, their weapons trained on her with mechanical precision. Through the mess hall's windows, she could see the patrol's headlights sweeping across the main gate. 30 seconds until they entered the kill zone. "You know what the funny thing is?" Maya said. "Buying time. I was going to marry you, Torres. We had plans. A house in Colorado, maybe some kids." Torres's head tilted slightly, like a dog hearing a distant sound. "Emotional attachments are inefficient. They compromise tactical decision-making. Do you remember Afghanistan?" Maya pressed. "The IED that flipped our Humvee? You pulled me out while the fuel was burning. You said you couldn't lose me." For just a moment, Torres's weapon wavered. His pupils contracted slightly, and Maya saw something human flicker behind his eyes. "I remember fire. Screaming." "That was you screaming," Maya said softly. "You were screaming my name." The other enhanced soldiers shifted restlessly, their formation tightening. Chun's finger moved to her trigger. "Target is attempting psychological manipulation. Recommend immediate elimination." Torres's weapon snapped back up, the moment of humanity crushed. "Agreed. Execute contaminated personnel." Maya keyed her radio. "Now, Vance." "Do it now." The ventilation system hummed to life with a soft whoosh. Invisible sedative began flooding the room, but Maya knew it would take time to take effect. The enhanced soldiers were already moving, their weapons rising. Maya rolled left as the first shots rang out, concrete chips exploding where she'd been crouched. She came up firing, her rounds punching into Chun's center mass. The woman staggered but didn't fall. The enhanced metabolism was already working to counteract the damage. More gunfire erupted as Maya dove behind the serving counter. Bullets chewed through the stainless steel, sending sparks flying. She could hear the enhanced coordinating their assault, their voices calm and professional, even as they tried to kill her. Flanking left. Overwatch established. Target is mobile behind cover. Maya's radio crackled with Dr. Vance's panicked voice. "The patrol's at the gate. They're not responding to my warnings." Through the chaos, Maya could hear the distant sound of vehicles entering the compound. The patrol was driving straight into hell, and she was pinned down, unable to help them. A grenade clattered across the floor toward her position. Maya threw herself away from the blast, the explosion lifting her off her feet and slamming her into the wall. Her ears rang and warm blood trickled down her face. When her vision cleared, Torres was standing over her, his pistol aimed at her head. But something was wrong with his stance. He was swaying slightly, his enhanced coordination beginning to fail. "The sedative," Maya gasped. "It's working." Torres's eyes were struggling to focus. Around the room, other enhanced soldiers were showing similar signs, slower movements, confused expressions. But they were still armed, still dangerous. Mission. Parameters. Torres mumbled, his weapon wavering. Maya saw her chance. She lunged forward, grabbing Torres's gun hand and forcing it away from her head. They struggled, his enhanced strength still formidable even as the sedative took hold. "Fight it, Torres!" Maya shouted. "You're still in there." "I know you are." For a moment, his grip loosened. His eyes met hers, and she saw recognition flicker, real recognition, not the cold calculation of the enhanced. "Maya?" His voice was small, confused. "What? What happened? Why does everything hurt?" Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Around the room, the other enhanced soldiers were dropping one by one, the sedative finally overwhelming their enhanced metabolisms. Maya grabbed Torres's radio and switched to the patrol frequency. "Night Patrol Alpha, this is Rodriguez. Base is compromised. Establish perimeter and await medical support. Do not enter the compound." The response came immediately. "Rodriguez? What's your status?" "We heard gunfire." Maya looked around the mess hall at the bodies of her friends, at the enhanced soldiers now unconscious on the floor, at the man she loved lying motionless at her feet. "Status is—" She paused, searching for words that could encompass the nightmare of the last hour. "Status is we're going to need a lot of help." Outside, she could hear vehicles stopping at the gate, voices calling for situation reports. The immediate crisis was over, but Maya knew the real work was just beginning. Her friends were still trapped inside their own minds, and she had no idea if they could ever truly come home. She knelt beside Torres and checked his pulse, steady but weak. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just hold on."